And the 10 largest fraud cases, Bank of America, Boston Scientific, Cendant, Cisco, all of these companies everybody knows. You predicted them?
8 out of 10.
Really?
8 out of 10, 2 years in advance at least. And the false positives of the model actually, what we found is that it actually predicted better than it was supposed to.
Really?
So it predicted 3 or 4 years out instead of the 2. So.
All right, let's go to how this all comes about. Let's go to the next slide, because the first part of it is who has a stake in the decision, and then the next thing is do they say what they want?
So what the model does is it begins to look at within the organization who's in this willing coalition, who's supporting the CEO in his decisions, and how they're getting paid. Right? What's their public benefit? What's the public good they're receiving? And then what do they say they want, right? Not what do they want in their heart of hearts, but what are they telling the world that they want? And so that drives a lot of the decisions as to how they receive their compensation.
Another couple of aspects of this is, are they on one issue compared to other issues, and how persuasive an influence could they exert?
So what the third bullet point is, how strongly do they feel about what they say they want, right? Is it sort of like if I say to you, well, which restaurant do you want, Chinese or Indian tonight for dinner? I really don't care. That's your salient factor. And then ultimately, if you say, well, I want Indian, then who within our party can you influence that we ultimately go to Indian?
All right, well, let's apply the model here. We got shareholders, institutional investors, senior executives, and the board looking at the corporation. So that's how is the model applied? So
a CEO, in order for him to keep his job, has to keep this group of people happy. He doesn't care about employees. He may say he does, but he doesn't really. The people who keep him in his job is what's called the willing coalition. And that willing coalition actually is the people that make sure he stays in a position of power.
Yeah, and there we are by that slide. The winning coalition and the willing coalition, what's the difference?
So the winning, if you think about a game of chess, right? Your willing coalition are the men on your thing. You have to be able to remove more men off my side of the board than I remove off of your side of the board in order to win the game. That means I have to, we'll use President Obama as an example. The old school said Hillary was the one that was going to win this. And so she had a willing coalition, the old boy network. Obama had the willing coalition of Oprah. Well, what Obama had to do is get more support at a faster rate than Hillary did. And that was how he created his winning coalition out of the little guy.
Okay, let's see how this works. We've got example company, and well, let's go to the next slide because there are pillars that you go through. The first pillar is corporate responsibility.
So we drill down actually into ultimately 6 pillars, 5 of which there are a total of 175 what we call KPIs or key performance indicators. And those are the intangibles that go on inside a company that ultimately at the end of the quarter, either the company has efficiently managed those key performance indicators or they haven't. For instance, have they had any, sort of environment. In the area of corporate responsibility, we look at things like what is the tenure of the board, right? So if we find that board members who have been on boards for 10 years end up committing fraud because they're complacent at a higher rate than companies who have board members who have only been an average of 2 years, then we might want to think that that's an important thing.
If they've been on there longer, they ask less questions.
Well, that's what we're finding.
The next pillar, human performance, turnover, absenteeism, training. Makes sense.
So the way the model works is one of the first indicators that there is what is the CEO doing to conserve cash? So one of the ways he does that is he lays employees off, pulls back on compensation, quits paying dividends. That's our first indicator that there's a problem. So we start looking at that. The second indicator then becomes, sort of as you drill down, we look at other things. And ultimately, it will be where the company has not managed its resources efficiently and it starts overstating its costs. Overstating its revenue and understating its costs.
Another pillar is innovation. And this has things like sales pipeline, capital R&D, technology patents. Things
Yeah,
like
again,
that.
if you're not innovating and you're not filing patents and you're not doing R&D, it means that ultimately the sales pipeline will dry up, right? Because somebody more innovative like Google will come around and eat Microsoft's lunch, so to speak.
Do you have to grow to be successful, or can you hold the line and be successful?
Well, I think, you know, if we look at Detroit, right, one would say, well, they've grown and it starts becoming a negative effect. What Richard Branson from Virgin does, what he does is he tends to, he's grown too big, he'll break it up, right, and start looking at other things. What are they doing to innovate within the company, and can they build a new brand off
So
of that?
innovation performance is very important.
It is very important.
Operational performance, certainly a very important pillar. Cost savings, inventory, profit per employee, very interesting. Direct to indirect ratio, I'm not sure I understand that.
So direct to indirect ratio is the cost, right? So, you know, if we're looking at sort of the profit per employee, you know, we talked about soft dollars, for instance. There's lots of ways that companies sort of play with the operational performance. And so it's, you know, we're looking at a lot of things. We find that customer service, if customer service calls go up, what does it mean? It generally means that either
People are griping.
People are griping, right? So they're either not happy with the customer service that they're getting or the quality of the products, right? Which we would look at recalls. So if recalls are happening, it means that there's a quality failure. And if we look at the tires, right, on the Ford Explorer, that was predictable. They started ignoring
Financial performance, that's the last pillar, and that's one that I would think everybody would talk about. Certainly everybody knows what ROI is. ROC is return on capital, ROS is return on sales. SG&A, I don't know what that is.
So it's sales and general administration and that kind of thing. So what we do within this is we actually look at, for instance, if you have an increase in inventory, but you also have an increase in your outstanding accounts payable or accounts receivable, it means that something's off balance there.
So this has been a very short review of how it's calculated. Now let's try to apply something, but let's first be fair and balanced about this. Fox News. A Fox News poll, Americans prefer the current system to Obama's health care plan. So I'm going to ask you, the 5 largest health insurance companies in America, if you were going to apply the integrity index to them, what would you do?
Well, first of all, we only apply it to public companies, so that's key. And we use, what's interesting about this index, what most people don't know, it's all based on publicly available data filed by the company with the Securities and Exchange Commission, either in their 10Q, which is their quarterly financial statements, or in their 10K, which is their annual statement. You can begin to see everybody gripes about CEO compensation. There is no doubt in the case of these companies, they have
that's symbolic for sure.
It is symbolic. But if in fact they're pulling from, one of the things that Obama talked about is excessive CEO compensation. So clearly within healthcare, there is an imbalance of public good going on, and it's being paid to CEOs. And I'm not against free markets. I'm not against capitalism. In fact, we find that, you know, it's not working because CEOs are being overcompensated relative to what they should be paid and the public good. Then it will reveal it in the Integrity Index.
Wow, that's going to have to be the last word. The Integrity Index by the Integrity Institute. We thank Lynn Brewer very much for being here, and even more importantly than that, for coming up with this, because this is very important to all of us and to our retirement as well. The Integrity Institute, or integrityinstitute.com, that's the website. Go to it. We'll see you right here next week on Public Exposure. Take care.